Hello everyone, myself Ajay Singh Gehlot and I will be taking up the economy portion discussion of your today's Anubhav test number 4. So let's start with the first question. The first question was question number 8. It says, with reference to the balance of payment, with reference to the balance of payment of India, consider the following statement. The first part is, a persistent trade deficit necessarily implies a current account deficit in the balance of payment. So the keywords here are trade deficit necessarily implies that there is a current account deficit in the balance of payment. First of all, what is balance of payment? Balance of payment simply means it is the combination of the current account and the capital account. कि जो भी इंडिया की ट्रेडिंग हो रही है या जो भी इंडिया का फाइनेंशियल इंटरेक्शन हो रहा है रेस्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड के साथ, उसको कौन अकाउंट करता है? बैलेंस ऑफ पेमेंट अकाउंट. इसके अंदर टू पोर्शंस हैं. वन इज द करंट अकाउंट, सेकंड इज द कैपिटल अकाउंट. करंट अकाउंट सिंपली मींस कि जो भी ट्रांजैक्शन उस एक साल में या विद इन दैट ईयर हो जाए, तो ट्रांजैक्शन हैपनिंग विद इन दैट वन पर्टिकुलर ईयर विल बी कवर्ड अंडर द करंट अकाउंट. और जो भी ट्रांजैक्शन एक साल से ज्यादा लेंगी उसे हम क्या बोलेंगे? कैपिटल अकाउंट. दैट इज देयर फॉर द लॉन्ग टर्म. Short term transaction, for example, if we are importing oil, that is coming under current account. Or I am providing services to any other nation, that comes under current account, because services provide hui, the amount is coming in my account, the transaction is settled. Capital account में क्या है कि एक साल से ज्यादा होगा, more than 1 year. For example, we are taking loan from some other country, then we have to repay it. So the loan will be repaid over the years, so that will be coming under capital account. Or secondly, someone is investing in India, then that investment is coming, and investment आती है तो it doesn't mean कि वो अभी वापस जाएगी. It will be taking some time, it will be developing assets in the country, and then the income will be going back. So what is that? That is capital account, that it is staying for more than 1 year or for more than for a longer period. Now current account के अंदर there are two parts. One is visible and one is invisible. Visible में क्या है? जैसे merchandise trade हो गया जो हमें दिखता है, तो exports and imports are covered under visibles. So that accounts for your trade deficit. What is the difference between the export and import? Is simply meaning trade deficit. Then invisibles include services, whatever services we provide, that comes under invisibles. Then income, whatever income we are getting from outside world, that comes under इनविजिबल्स. इनकम का क्या मतलब है? इनकम के बेसिकली चार फैक्टर्स होते हैं. एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप हो गया, लेबर हो गया, देन यू हैव कैपिटल, एंड देन यू हैव प्रॉपर्टी वगैरह. सो फॉर एग्जांपल, आई एम हैविंग अ प्रॉपर्टी इन यूएसए, देन आई विल बी गेटिंग सम रेंट आउट ऑफ फ्रॉम देयर, तो दैट रेंट विल बी माय रेंटल इनकम. तो वो हो गया हमारी रेंटल इनकम. या फॉर एग्जांपल, अ डॉक्टर गोज टू यूएसए एंड फॉर 10-15 days he stays there, gives some services, treats people, get his amount and comes back. That comes under income. सो इनकम बेसिकली क्या है कि जो भी वहां से हम एज वेयर फाइनेंशियल गेन्स जो हमें वहां से हो रहे, दैट कम्स एज अ इनकम. सो दैट ऑल्सो कम्स अंडर इनविजिबल. देन थर्ड इज ट्रांसफर्स. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, गिफ्ट देना या रेमिटेंसेज आना, या यहाँ से जो स्टूडेंट्स बाहर पढ़ने के लिए जाते हैं उन स्टूडेंट्स को जो पे करते हैं पेरेंट्स, दैट कम्स अंडर ट्रांसफर्स. सो वट एवर इज कमिंग इन इंडिया और वट एवर इज गोइंग आउटसाइड एंड इट इज हैविंग ओनली वन वे ट्रांजेक्शन, दैट कम्स अंडर ट्रांसफर्स. तो ट्रांसफर्स में क्या आएगा? गिफ्ट्स आ गए, रेमिटेंसेज आ गई, या जो भी पेरेंट्स अपने बच्चों को देते हैं बाहर रहने के लिए, दैट कम्स अंडर ट्रांसफर्स. सो दीज आर द टू कंपोनेंट्स ऑफ द करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट. करंट अकाउंट. नाउ करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट सिंपली मींस कि जब हम इन पांचों को जोड़ेंगे, व्हेन वी आर एडिंग ऑल दीज फाइव, देयर इज अ नेगेटिव वैल्यू दैट इज कमिंग, एंड दैट नेगेटिव वैल्यू अकाउंट्स फॉर करंट अकाउंट deficit. That simply means current account deficit. Now, the question was that a persistent trade deficit simply implies current account deficit. So if we are having a negative value here and we are having a higher positive value here, because for India, remittances that comes under transfer is a very important component. A lot of remittances comes to India from outside world. So remittance is a very important portion. Then service trade is a very important portion. Income again is a very important portion that is coming from outside world. So if we are having trade deficit as negative, but we are having a higher value for the invisibles, that is a positive value, then there will not be a current account deficit. So that means the first statement here is wrong. The persistent trade deficit does not necessarily means कि current account deficit होगा. It may be or it may not be. If the invisibles and visibles both are negative, then it is going to be a current account deficit. Second statement, FDI. Inflows help in financing the trade deficit through capital account. Right है? We have seen this. FDI किसमें आएगा? Investment. Investment comes under, for example, investment in क्या रहेगा? FDI हो गया. Then it will be FIIs also. So whatever FDI, FII is coming, what they are doing, they are financing through the current account. किसको फाइनेंस कर रही है? थ्रू द कैपिटल अकाउंट किसको फाइनेंस करेंगी? करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट को. सो करंट अकाउंट के अंदर जो भी डेफिसिट रहेगा, जो भी नेगेटिव वैल्यू रहेगी, where from where we can finance that? We can finance that from the investment, that is FDIs and FIIs. उसके अलावा लोन से भी हो सकता है, बोरोइंग्स के थ्रू भी हो सकता है, या बैंकिंग कैपिटल के थ्रू भी हो सकता है. So is this capital account can finance the current account deficit? The second statement becomes right here. Third, increase in the foreign exchange reserves is likely to reduce the trade deficit in the current account. So it is saying कि जब हम अगर forex को बढ़ाएं तो हमारा ट्रेड डेफिसिट रिड्यूस होगा. इज इट राइट और रॉन्ग? दिस इज अ रॉन्ग स्टेटमेंट. व्हाई? इफ द फॉरेक्स रिजर्व इट इज इंक्रीज्ड, व्हाट इट इज गोइंग टू डू? इट इज गोइंग टू फाइनेंस. क्या करेगा? वो फाइनेंस करेगा, यानी उसको ओवरकम करेगा जो भी हमें घाटा हो रहा है ट्रेड डेफिसिट के अंदर, बट उसको रिड्यूस नहीं करेगा. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, इफ दिस वैल्यू इज -$5 billion, then forex reserve we are having around $700 billion. So we can take extra amount from here to cover this, but ये इसका element नहीं है, तो that's why it is going to finance, not reduce. reduce करने का मतलब क्या होता है कि उसका element है. अगर reduce करना है तो कैसे reduce होगा? Either we are increasing the exports or we are decreasing the imports, then it can be reduced, right? So increase in forex exchange reserves is likely to finance. It is likely to finance the trade deficit. It is not going to reduce the trade deficit. तो दोनों words के अंदर difference है. So that's why we have to look for the keywords in the question so that you are not making silly mistakes. Next, an appreciation of the real effective exchange rate of rupee can help in reducing the trade deficit in India. देखो, real exchange effective rate से क्या होगा? If the real exchange effective rate is increased, that means the value of rupee is increasing. So value of rupee, it is increasing as compared to dollars. So what is going to happen? It is going to lead to the exports becoming costly, price competitiveness is reduced, and imports, they become cheaper. So it's an obvious thing. If the oil is becoming cheaper, if the digital things that are coming from outside world are becoming cheaper, or for example, if the luxury cars are becoming cheaper, then their demand is going to increase. Obviously, it is going to happen. So real effective exchange rate, if it is increased, that means it can help in increasing the imports for the country. If the imports are increasing, that simply means the trade deficit is going to increase. So instead of decreasing, the trade deficit is going to increase if the real exchange effective rate is increased. So this statement again becomes wrong. Fifth is an overall BOP surplus implies the net increase in the country's foreign exchange reserves. तो अगर एक पूरा BOP surplus होगा तो what is the BOP surplus? BOP surplus is current account plus capital account. It is positive. If we add the current account plus the capital account and the value comes as positive, so whatever positive come, that is going to go to the forex reserve. So that is going to increase our forex reserve. So the fifth statement is right. So the answer here becomes option A. Only two. The second and fifth statements are correct here. First, third and fourth are wrong. Now let's move to the question number 9. Question number 9 says, recently Government of India has proposed debt to GDP ratio as the primary anchor for fiscal consolidation, replacing the fiscal deficit to GDP in ratio. So there are 4 to 5 keywords. पहला तो keyword क्या है? Debt to GDP ratio. Second is fiscal deficit to GDP ratio. Third one is fiscal consolidation and fourth one is primary anchor. प्राइमरी एंकर सिंपली मींस कि जब भी हमें फिजिकल कंसोलिडेशन को देखना है, यानी हमें देखना है कि हाउ मच प्रूडेंट वी हैव बीन in our expenditure and with our finances, then we are going to see what is the debt to GDP ratio. पहले हम क्या देखा करते थे, पहले हम देखते थे fiscal deficit to GDP ratio. So now the government has said that from next year we are going to take debt to GDP ratio as the primary anchor for fiscal consolidation. और इसका जो बेसिक प्रीमाइस है वो आता है फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल तो FRBM एक्ट के थ्रू. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल इट इज कमिंग थ्रू द FRBM Act, and that was amended in 2018. This act said that the government should be having a debt to GDP ratio of 60%, of which central government can have a maximum of 40% and the state government can have a maximum of 20%. So this is the target given by the FRBM Amendment Act. And this particular provision, it was actually suggested by the N.K. Singh committee. They suggested that there should be debt to GDP ratio should be taken as one of the primary anchors for the fiscal consolidation. Now, government has said that by 2031, we are going to reduce our debt to GDP ratio to 50%. कि मैक्सिमम हमारी जो डेप्ट टू जीडीपी रेशियो रहेगी वो कितनी रहेगी 50%. तो इट इज स्टिल 10% हायर देन दैट सजेस्टेड बाय द एफआरबीएम एक्ट. जस्ट माइंड यू कि ये 40% को देख रहे हैं हम लोग यहाँ पे कि सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट अपना टारगेट रख रही है कि हम 50% करेंगे, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट्स के लिए भी कोई प्रोविजन इसमें नहीं है. सेकेंड थिंग कि व्हाई गवर्नमेंट वांट टू चेंज इट, और कमेटी ने भी क्यों बोला कि यू शुड चेंज इट टू द डेप्ट टू जीडीपी रेशियो. देखो, when we talk about fiscal deficit, what is fiscal deficit? Fiscal deficit is the net borrowings of the government from the market, or we can say fiscal deficit simply means the net borrowings. What happens is that when we are saying fiscal deficit, it is for the particular year. कि इस साल के लिए फिजिकल डेफिसिट इतना था 3.5%, नेक्स्ट ईयर के लिए वी आर टारगेटिंग फॉर 3.2%. तो पर्टिकुलर ईयर को लेता है. डेप्ट क्या कर रहा है, वो सारे जितना भी हमारा डेप्ट है गवर्नमेंट के ऊपर वो सारा एक साथ लेता है कि हमारा पुराना डेप्ट कितना रहा है, जो हमने पुराने फिजिकल डेफिसिट के थ्रू एक्यूमुलेट किया, तो क्यूमुलेटिव एफर्ट वो लेता है डेप्ट वाला, डेप्ट टू जीडीपी रेशियो. सो डेप्ट टू जीडीपी रेशियो first of all is going to take cumulative debt of GDP, debt of the government. तो जितना भी पुराना रहा है वो सारे की सारी रेशियो को एक साथ लेगा. सेकेंड थिंग, फिजिकल डेफिसिट के अंदर वी आर ओनली शोइंग द बजटरी डेफिसिट. जो बजट के अंदर बोरोइंग शो होंगी सिर्फ वही हमारी फिजिकल डेफिसिट के अंदर विजिबल होंगी. उसके साथ साथ देयर आर ऑफ बजट बोरोइंग ऑल्सो, जो गवर्नमेंट बाहर से बोरो करती है, जैसे कि पीएसयूज. फॉर एग्जांपल, गवर्नमेंट इशूड ऑयल बॉन्ड्स टू द पीएसयूज. अब ऑयल बॉन्ड्स क्या थे, ऑयल बॉन्ड्स पर इशूड कि आप जो अभी सब्सिडाइज रेट है पेट्रोल का उसी पे आप उसको सेल कीजिए, और जो भी आपका घाटा है द गवर्नमेंट इज गोइंग टू पे यू दैट विद प्रिंसिपल एंड इंटरेस्ट दोनों के साथ. तो कहीं ना कहीं तो गवर्नमेंट के ऊपर बर्डन था ना पीएसयूज को पे करने का. सो दैट एक्चुअली इंक्रीज द गवर्नमेंट बोरोइंग्स. सो जो ऑफ बजट बोरोइंग्स हैं वो कभी भी शो नहीं होती फिजिकल डेफिसिट के अंदर. वेयर this debt to GDP ratio, it covers those of budget borrowings also. Debt to GDP ratio is covering both the things. One thing is the cumulative, जितना भी पुराना साल का इकट्ठा हुआ, so that we know what is the actual condition of the country with respect to finances. Second is कि जो off budget borrowings हैं जो बजट में शो नहीं होती, that will also be covered. So both चीज इसमें कवर हो रही हैं. तो that means we are getting a very holistic picture of whatever the finances we are having. So that's why government is shifting to that. Now let's see the statements. First one is, unlike fiscal deficit, the debt to GDP ratio captures the cumulative impact of the past deficit. This statement is right. Second, shifting to debt to GDP, anchor provides greater flexibility in managing शॉर्ट टर्म फिस्कल स्लिपेजेस विदाउट कॉम्प्रोमाइजिंग लॉन्ग टर्म फिस्कल डिसिप्लिन। ये स्टेटमेंट भी ठीक है, क्यों? क्योंकि अगर मान लो 3.5% का ही हम फिस्कल डेफिसिट मान के चलते हैं और इस साल कुछ हो गया तो प्रॉब्लमेटिक हो जाता है गवर्नमेंट के लिए, उसको अकोमोडेट करना बड़ा मुश्किल होता है। वेरएज अगर हम डेप्ट टू जीडीपी रेशियो रखते हैं तो उसमें क्या गवर्नमेंट हैज टू मेंटेन कि हमें 50 तक आना है, इस साल हमारा टारगेट इतना रहेगा, तो उसको मैनेज करना थोड़ा इजी होता है। तो लॉन्ग टर्म पर्सपेक्टिव से इट बिकम्स मच इजियर फॉर द गवर्नमेंट टू मैनेज द शॉर्ट टर्म डिसरप्शंस इन द फाइनेंशियल सिस्टम। एंड करंटली जो इंडिया का डेप्ट टू जीडीपी रेशियो चल रहा है इन 2024, इट इज अराउंड 81.29%। आपको याद रहना चाहिए 81.29% is the current debt to GDP ratio for the country in 2024 and it was highest। कब रहा होगा हाईएस्ट? हाईएस्ट ये रहा था कोविड के टाइम पे। It was highest in 2020 when it reached to 89.45%। तो एट दैट टाइम इट वाज हाईएस्ट। उसके बाद से कंसिस्टेंटली ये डिक्लाइन हुआ है। तो इंडिया के जब डेप्ट टू जीडीपी रेशियो कैसा रहा है? पहले ये इंडिया का ऐसे गया है, फिर इट हैज इंक्रीज, नाउ इट इज कंसिस्टेंटली डिक्रीजिंग। इट इज कंसिस्टेंटली नाउ डिक्रीजिंग, राइट? सो आंसर हियर बिकम्स बोथ द स्टेटमेंट्स आर करेक्ट। आंसर इज ऑप्शन सी। क्वेश्चन नंबर 9 आंसर इज ऑप्शन सी। नेक्स्ट चलते हैं क्वेश्चन नंबर 10 पे। As per RBI's classification, failure to meet payment obligation would be deemed to be a willful default. In which of the following situation? So we are talking here about willful। willful का मतलब कि खुद की मर्जी से मैं डिफॉल्ट करना चाहता हूं, यानी मेरी कंडीशंस अलाउ करती हैं मुझे, आई कैन रीपे द लोन, बट मैं अपनी मर्जी से डिफॉल्ट करूंगा, मैं आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू पे बैक द मनी। तो आरबीआई ने कुछ नए नॉर्म्स लेके आए हैं इसके लिए। RBI has brought some new norms in which it is going to redefine the willful default. And last year, RBI has given a list of the willful defaulters also. Let's see what are the conditions in which a person or an entity will be considered as a willful defaulter. The first one is the borrower diverts. The word here is diverts funds borrowed from a specific purpose towards some other activity. Statement right or wrong? बिल्कुल ठीक है। For example, a person takes loan for establishing manufacturing unit, and manufacturing unit में को establish करने की बजाय he is using those funds to make his home। तो उसने क्या किया? उसने divert कर दिया funds को। The amount which was borrowed from the bank was meant for the manufacturing, कि आप एक नई इंडस्ट्री लगाओ, क्योंकि आप इंडस्ट्री लगाओगे तो it is going to give you income and आप हमें repay कर पाओगे। Now the person ने क्या किया? He took the amount and he start building his own home। So now home is not going to give you any kind of returns, so that's why it comes under the willful default कि आप जानबूझकर पैसे पे नहीं करना चाहते, तो ये किस में आएगा? willful default में आएगा। तो this statement is right। Second, the borrower disposes of or removes assets pledged as security without forming the lender। ये भी सही है कि for example एक borrower ने he has taken loan from the bank and he has put his own land as a collateral. Now he sells the collateral and is not telling the lender or the bank कि I have sold that thing. So that comes under willful default, obviously. Third, the borrower defaults on the repayment obligations despite having the capacity to repay। यानी जानबूझ के he can repay the loan but he is not giving his EMIs, he is not giving his installments, so that also comes as a willful defaulter। So all the three are correct here। Answer becomes option D, that is 1, 2 and 3। This is a very basic, very logical question, directly हो सकता है if you are just attentive to the details of the question। Next is question number 11। Which of the following best describes the term carry trade often seen in use? देखो carry trade क्या होता है? Just I am telling you by an example, then you will be able to understand it। For example, this is our America and यहाँ पे है USA and there is India। Please don't mind my figures। Now what happens is that in USA they are giving loan at an interest of 1%। if you are taking 100 rupees, you just repay as 101 rupee as an interest every year। Now in India, what is happening is that the rate of FD or fixed deposit is 6.5%. This is the loan interest rate for loan, and this is the fiscal deficit. Oh sorry, the fixed deposit कि जो आप बैंक में अमाउंट वहां पे रखोगे, whatever amount you deposit in the bank is going to pay you 6.5%. That simply means if a person is taking a loan of 1000 rupees, he has to repay 10 rupees to the bank, and he takes this 1000 rupees and he is going to invest in India. He is going to invest in India, and इस 1000 rupees के ऊपर he is going to get 65 rupees. So see, he's paying 10 rupees as an interest and he's getting 65 rupees as an income. तो उसको अभी भी 55 rupees क्या हो गए, बच गए. This is known as carry trade. इसको क्या बोलते हैं? This is known as carry trade. That you are taking loan from in a currency which is having a lower rate of interest, and you are investing in a currency which is providing a higher interest rate on the deposits, or higher yield it is providing. That is known as carry trade. I think you have understood that. Now let's move to the question. Question is, importing low cost goods to export at higher value. This is wrong. Borrowing in low interest currency to invest in the high interest currency assets. This is absolutely right. This is absolutely right. Third, carbon credit arbitrage between voluntary and compliance market. This is wrong. Then post state control of transshipment vessel. This is absurd. So the answer becomes option B here. A very simple question. Now next is question number 12. It is about stocks and flow. What are stocks and what are flow? देखो, stock क्या होता है? You are assessing what is the amount at a particular time. अब किसी भी टाइम पे जाके देख सकते हो what is the stock, कि कितना हमारे स्टोर में रखा है. दैट इज सिंपली मीन स्टॉक. तो स्टॉक इकोनॉमी में क्या रहेगा कि फॉर एग्जांपल दिस इज द लाइन. नाउ यू कैन एट एनी पॉइंट यू कैन चेक, जब भी आपका मन हो आप चेक कर सकते हो उसको. दैट इज नोन एज स्टॉक. व्हाट इज अ फ्लो? फ्लो यू कैन चेक ओनली आफ्टर कंसिडरेबल अमाउंट ऑफ पीरियड. एक पीरियड के बाद ही आप चेक कर पाओगे व्हाट इज द फ्लो. फॉर एग्जाम्पल जीडीपी. जीडीपी को हम एक साल के बाद ही चेक करते हैं कि दिस ईयर द जीडीपी वाज फॉर एग्जांपल 500, नेक्स्ट ईयर इट इज 600 और प्रीवियस ईयर इट वाज 400. तो एक पूरा एक कंसिडरेबल अमाउंट ऑफ टाइम के बाद ही हम चेक कर पाते हैं कि व्हाट इज द वैल्यू ऑफ दैट. सो जैसे जीडीपी हुआ तो जीडीपी इज अ फ्लो बिकॉज एक टाइम के बाद ही हम चेक कर पाएंगे व्हाट इज द एक्चुअल वैल्यू ऑफ जीडीपी. फिस्कल डेफिसिट भी इट इज एक्चुअली अ फ्लो. व्हाई? Because fiscal deficit is also being checked after a year. Third is money supply. Now money supply is floor stock. Money supply, the RBI through monetary policy changes the money supply, and at any time it can do that. So money supply can be checked on daily basis, on quarter basis, on fortnightly basis. So whatever time you want to allocate, you can check the money supply. So money supply comes under stock. A stock can be checked at any time. Flow can only be checked after considerable period of time. That you have to remember. Now next is external debt. External debt is again a stock. We can track external debt on daily basis also. So that again is right. So the second and third are wrong. First and fourth are correct. Answer becomes option B. That is only two pairs are correct. Now you have to also check that is it is asking for correctly matched. Sometimes we are not checking this thing and we do the silly mistakes. Now next question is question number 13. It says under the monetary policy framework. Now keyword here is monetary policy framework. The RBI targets core consumer price index or CPI inflation within a range of 2 to 6%. So basically we have to check first of all what is the monetary policy framework. Second is core CPI. Third thing is the value right or wrong? So if we see the macroeconomic policy, can be basically of two types. One is our fiscal policy and second is our monetary policy. This fiscal policy, this is basically about the control of the government over its expenditure, or we can say spending, revenues, that comes under fiscal policy. Monetary policy is about controlling the money supply. Money supply, it is controlled by RBI. And there are various tools. For example, the tool is repo rate, reverse repo rate, CRR, SLR. So these are the tools through which RBI controls the money supply. That comes under monetary policy. Now, pre 2016, 2016 से पहले क्या होता था? RBI was the sole authority to decide upon the monetary policy, and this power was given by the RBI Act of 1934. And the anchor here, what is the anchor? किसके basis पे आप देखोगे? तो anchor here was WPI. Now after 2016, the Urjit Patel committee was formed, and this Urjit Patel committee gave recommendation that first of all there should be a monetary policy committee. There should be a monetary policy committee which shall be consisting of equal members from RBI and from the government, and the RBI governor is going to have a casting vote. So इसके अंदर 6 members थे, 3 members came from RBI and 3 members came from the government, or were nominated by the government. And the RBI governor was having the casting vote here, यानी the final vote was having, if there is a tie कि 3-3 हो जाए divide, तो casting vote रहेगी RBI governor के पास. So that was one thing. Secondly, they said there should be a flexible targeting. There should be a flexible targeting. एक रेंज में टारगेटिंग होनी चाहिए. वी कैन नॉट से कि आरबीआई आपको 4% ही मेंटेन करना है इन्फ्लेशन. इट सेट कि आप मेंटेन कीजिए एक रेंज के अंदर. जैसे फिलहाल के लिए 4 ± 2 है. 4 ± 2 का मतलब क्या हुआ? 4 ± 2 means it is 2% to 6%. So RBI is having a range of 2 to 6% in which it has to maintain the inflation. So that is the second thing. Now, third thing that it said was that this targeting will be done through a monetary policy framework. It will be done through a monetary policy framework agreement, and this agreement will be signed between RBI and the central government. ये RBI and central government के बीच में होगा, in which they are going to decide कि what will be the target by the MPC or monetary policy committee जो उसको achieve करना होगा. For the past 10 years, the target is 4 ± 2%. ये current target, and every 5 years there will be a review of this monetary policy agreement, and हर 5 साल के बाद नए targets दिए जाएंगे. तो फिलहाल के लिए the government has maintained for the current session also we are having the target of 4 ± 2%. So the target will be revised after every 5 years. तो हर 5 साल के बाद every 5 years the RBI and government are going to sit down and they are going to decide that what will be the target for the next 5 years. What will be the range of the inflation that we have to maintain for the next 5 years. I think these things are clear to you. Now, this MPC, the last point that comes is that what will be the anchor for this. पहले तो WPI को use करते थे. Now the anchor for this 4%, ये 4% कौन सा? The anchor will be CPI. We are going to go for the CPI. CPI के basis पे we are going to manage our inflation. That was told by this Urjit Patel committee, and these recommendations were accepted, and the amendment was made in the RBI Act for allowing MPC to control the monetary policy. So this was the basic of this monetary policy committee. Now next thing that comes is that CPI, what CPI includes? So you might have heard about CPI rural area, CPI urban area, and CPI combined. So basically, if we go for CPI, it can be divided into three parts: CPI urban, CPI rural, and CPI combined. So we are going to see the CPI combined figures for this monetary policy. तो मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी में व्हाट विल बी द एंकर? एंकर विल बी सीपीआई कंबाइंड. एंड सीपीआई कंबाइंड में क्या क्या आएगा? इट विल बी हैविंग 200 कंपोनेंट्स. These are the various elements under CPI combined. Now, what happens is that it is having some elements, for example, food and beverages, and you can say fuel and light, जिसमें बहुत ज्यादा इन्फ्लेशन होती है. If a monsoon is delayed by even 1 week, there will be inflation in the foods. If there is some global crisis, then the fuel cost is going to increase. For example, Red Sea में crisis हुए, yeah, there was a crisis of Ukraine and Russia, or there were crises with respect to Israel. So all these factors actually impact the fuel cost immediately. तो inflation को एकदम से बढ़ा सकते हैं. And secondly, see, food prices have 45.86% weightage. Fuel and cost, it is 6.84%. तो ऑलमोस्ट इफ वी से मोर देन 50% जो वेटेज है सीपीआई का, दैट इज बीइंग कंट्रोल्ड बाय टू वोलेटाइल कंपोनेंट्स. सो एक्चुअल फिगर हमें कभी नहीं पता चलते कि इन्फ्लेशन क्या है, क्योंकि ये जो चीजें हैं ये गवर्नमेंट के कंट्रोल से बाहर है. सो दैट्स व्हाई every inflation has been divided into three kinds. One is a headline inflation, that is the CPI combined जो गवर्नमेंट देती है, वो होती है headline inflation. After removing the food component and after removing the fuel and light component, we get the core inflation. Core inflation क्या है? After removing the volatile elements from the headline inflation, we get core inflation. Now, core inflation के अंदर भी क्या हुआ कि what we see, we have removed the fuel, we have removed the food, so हमने वो चीजें हटा दी. पर problem was with respect to miscellaneous. Miscellaneous के अंदर क्या है? There is one component known as transport and communication. This transport and communication itself is having an element of petrol and diesel for vehicles and lubricants. So that again amounts for a volatile element. So this refined inflation में हम क्या करते हैं? हम लोग we remove the petrol and diesel along with lubricants, और उसके साथ फूड आइटम और फ्यूल तो हमने ऑलरेडी हटा ही दिया था कोर से. सो दैट बिकम्स अ रिफाइंड कोर इन्फ्लेशन. तो इन तीनों के बीच में ये डिफरेंस है. नाउ कमिंग बैक टू द क्वेश्चन, the question says under monetary policy framework the RBI targets core inflation. This statement is wrong. Why? ये core नहीं होता, this is the headline. It is headline CPI. Inflation within the target range of 2 to 6%. This statement is right. ये वाला portion सही है, ये गलत है. So the first statement becomes wrong. Second, core CPI excludes volatile components like food and fuel, making it a better indicator of the underlying inflation trend. This statement is right. So the answers here become statement 1 is wrong and statement 2 is correct. Answer is option D. Statement 1 is incorrect and statement 2 is correct. Now next is question number 14. It says, with reference to the NBFCs in India, consider the following statement. तो first of all, NBFC होता क्या है? तो NBFC is a जो the RBI defines NBFC as a company registered under the Companies Act of 1956, and this entity is involved in following activities: lending and business, hire and purchase, leasing, insurance business, deposit receiving, chit funds, stocks and share acquisition. So any NBFC would be defined as a company which is registered under the Companies Act of 1956 and is involved in the following activities. Now coming to the question says NBFCs are not part of the payment and settlement system. And now what is this payment and settlement system? Payment and settlement system का simple मतलब ये है, जैसे for example I am transferring some amount through internet banking, so that will be a payment and settlement system. If we see the payment and settlement system में क्या क्या आएगा? चेक्स आ जाएंगे जो पेपर वगैरह से होते हैं, या MICR and नॉन MICR आ जाएगा. Then it can have bulk electronic transactions like ECS and NACH. और इट कैन बी हैविंग कार्ड पेमेंट, जो हम कार्ड यूज करते हैं, डेबिट क्रेडिट कार्ड, या कोई इलेक्ट्रॉनिक के थ्रू भी अगर हम करते हैं तो वो आ जाएगा, कार्ड पेमेंट्स विल बी कमिंग इन दैट. देन वी आर हैविंग लार्ज वैल्यू ट्रांजैक्शंस के लिए देयर इज आरटीजीएस. स्मॉल रिटेल के लिए जो स्मॉल ट्रांजैक्शन उसके लिए हो जाएगा नेशनल इलेक्ट्रॉनिक फंड ट्रांसफर. एंड फॉर द इमीडिएट ट्रांजैक्शन वी आर हैविंग NEIMPS एंड यूपीआई जो हम यूज करते हैं मोबाइल्स के अंदर. एंड लास्टली ई मनी, प्रीपेड पेमेंट इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स एंड गिफ्ट्स वगैरह के लिए जो रहेगा. सो दीज आर द एलिमेंट्स दैट आर कमिंग इन द पेमेंट एंड सेटलमेंट सिस्टम. नाउ जो पेमेंट एंड सेटलमेंट सिस्टम है, इट ऑथराइजेस RBI for payment system, that RBI is going to oversee the payment system of the country, and RBI can authorize other entities to look for it. For example, RBI has given CCIL, NPCI, card payment networks, cross border inbound money, ATMs, PPI issuers, instant money transfer operators, trades and Bharat bill payment operators. So it has authorized these entities to ensure the payment system in the country. NPCI everyone knows, Bheem हो गया, UPI हो गया, everything comes under NPCI. Even your RuPay card, that was also the product of the NPCI. So these are the things जिसको RBI ने allow किया है for the payment system. Now the first statement is NBFCs are not a part of the payment and settlement system. This statement is absolutely right. NBFCs are not part of the payment and settlement system. The first statement is right. Banks are the part of payment and settlement system. Second, loan extended by NBFCs using funds borrowed from banks may be classified as a priority sector lending. Yes, this statement is also correct. Now RBI, to increase the outreach of the credit to the needy persons, has now said कि NBFCs को भी जो fund allocate किए जाएंगे वो priority sector lending के अंदर होंगे. So this statement becomes correct. Third, banks are permitted to enter into co-lending arrangement with NBFCs for lending to the priority sectors. Obviously, if the second statement is right, to third statement भी obvious conclusion है कि banks उनके साथ they can collaborate with the NBFCs for priority sector lending. So third statement also becomes right. The answer is option D, 1, 2 and 3. So for question number 14, the answer becomes option D. Now next we move to the question number 54. For the question number 54, the question is, recently India's foreign exchange reserves crossed the 700 billion US dollars mark. To be precise, it was 704 USD in the September 2024. So September end May it was USD 704. So the first statement is, for the first time gold has become the largest component of the India's foreign exchange reserve, surpassing foreign currency assets. So if we see forex, उसके अंदर बेसिकली चार एलिमेंट्स होते हैं. एक होता है FCA, फॉरेन करेंसी एसेट्स. दिस इज फॉरेन करेंसी एसेट्स. इसमें क्या आएगा? डॉलर इज देयर, देयर कैन बी येन, पाउंड्स, यूरो कैन बी देयर. सो जो करेंसीज हैं दैट कम्स अंडर फॉरेन करेंसी एसेट. Second we are having is gold, whatever gold reserves we are having. Third is SDR, special drawing rights, and last one is IMF reserves. So these are the four elements we are having under forex reserve. Now currently in April, I think April 25, the forex reserve of country was 688 US dollars. So it was 688 US dollars, and this 688 has the capacity to cover 11 months of our imports. तो ये 11 months के imports को cover करने की capability रखता है 688 billion dollars का जो हमारा forex reserve था. Now out of this, the foreign currency assets, it amounts for 580 billion US dollars. The gold, it was around 84 billion US dollar. The SDR, it accounted for 18.5 billion, and IMF reserve, it accounted for 4.5 billion. So this was the amount with respect to the forex reserve. कि FCA कितना है? 580 billion का है. The gold is 84 billions. So SDR is 18.5 billion and IMF reserves are 4.5 billions. So next, let's come back to the question. The question says that for the first time, gold has become the largest component. It's very, 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 you can say highly impossible. Why? Gold is only 84 billion US dollars, whereas the FCA or foreign currency assets, it is 580. So it simply means that FCA is 7 times to that of the gold reserves. So first statement हो जाएगा wrong. Second, RBI maintains foreign exchange reserves sufficient to provide 24 months of the import cover. So 24 months is a very high number. In 688 US dollars and $68 billion, we can actually cover the imports of 11 months. So it's highly maximum we can cover an import of 12 months, not 24 months. So this statement again becomes wrong. So this ये जो दो statements हैं ये तो आप logically भी कर सकते हो. Why? Because more or less whatever forex reserve we are having, that is coming from capital account, because trade deficit and current account deficit तो India has always had, because हमारे exports कम और imports ज़्यादा हैं, because we are dependent upon the imports. Secondly, capital account ही है that is able to improve our forex reserves, so that is improving. Now third thing is that गोल्ड हम लोग इंपोर्ट करते हैं पर बहुत कम करते हैं, whereas FDI and other investment that are more. So obviously gold can never be greater than the FCA. Second statement, 24 months, it's a very, very large number. If it would have said 13 months, 14 months, then the question would have become very difficult for you. But it is saying 2 years of import. That is a striking thing. Without knowing it, you can easily cut it down. So the second statement also becomes wrong. So these two statements can easily be solved by using logic only. Third statement, India's total foreign exchange reserves are currently higher than the country's total external debt. Now this statement again becomes a tricky. The total external debt of the country is around 707 USD, 717 USD. And this was the figure from the December 2025. If we see the quarterly report given by the Ministry of Finance, it says that India's, at the end of December 2024, the external debt was placed at 717 billion rupees, and the highest our forex reserve has gone is 704 billion dollars. So that again means the third statement is wrong. So first is wrong, second is wrong, and third is wrong. The answer becomes option D. Right? Now next is question number 55. It says the Union Budget 2025 identifies MSME sector as one of the 4 key engines of the India's growth. Why it has said this thing? Because it contributes 30% to our GDP and 45% of exports are contributed by MSME sector only. So MSME sector becomes very important for us. So that's why we are focusing upon that. There are multiple schemes regarding it. For example, first, PM Vishwakarma Yojana. It provides end-to-end support to artisans and craftsmen who work with their hands and tools. This statement is correct. This scheme was launched on September 17th, 2023. Now, if you want to remember the date, although it is not very important to remember it, but for the sake of remembering, it is the date of birth of our Prime Minister. So it's the birth date of the Prime Minister on which this particular scheme was launched. So first statement is correct, and this scheme it spans for 2023-24 to 2027-28, and the allocation will be 13,000 crores. So this amount will be allocated to this scheme. Second, Prime Minister's Employment Generation Program. Now this scheme is for credit linked subsidy scheme for establishment of micro enterprises in non-farm sector. Very generic scheme. This statement is right. Then Safurti scheme. What is the Safurti scheme? It's the scheme of the funds for the regeneration of traditional industries. So that is the meaning of Sfurti. So it is to organize the traditional artisans into clusters to enhance their competitiveness. The statement is correct here. Last, MSME champions. This is speedy redressal of the MSME grievances. This was launched by the Ministry of MSME. So this fourth one is also correctly matched. So the answer is option A, 1, B, 2, C, 3 and D, 4. Now, this champion scheme, there is a champion portal that has been that is being maintained by the Ministry of Micro Enterprises. It says its focus is to ensure speedy, convenient, and effective redressal of the MSME grievances. Second, hand holding and helping MSMEs. Third, providing guidance and advisory services in the areas of financial, market, technology, raw materials, labor, infrastructure, etc. Then connecting MSME with the key officials, and lastly disseminating information and details of the all schemes for the MSME sector. So basically पूरा एक hand holding, their grievance redressal, this will be covered by this champion portal by the MSME. Now next is question number 56. Question number 56 is about PPP. It says, in which of the following PPP models do the government and the private entity share the project cost? देखो किसी भी in any PPP project what are the main concerns? एक concern तो होता है कि who is going to design it. Then there is a concern of procurement. Who is going to procure the material? Is it going to be government or going to be the private entity? Third problem is who is going to build it? Who will be responsible for building that project? For example, if we have to make a bridge, तो उस ब्रिज को डिजाइन कौन करेगा? इज इट द गवर्नमेंट और द प्राइवेट एंटिटी? उसके लिए जो मटेरियल चाहिए वो कौन प्रोक्योर करेगा? विल द गवर्नमेंट इज गोइंग टू प्रोवाइड और द प्राइवेट एंटिटी हैज टू हिमसेल्फ ब्रिंग दैट? थर्ड इज हु इज गोइंग टू बिल्ड दैट? कौन उसको बनाएगा? कि प्राइवेट एंटिटी बनाएगी या गवर्नमेंट बनाएगी? तो दैट इज अनदर प्रॉब्लम, दैट इज अनदर फैक्टर. देन द मेन फैक्टर इज फाइनेंस. Who is going to finance that? Who is going to pay for the building material, the procurement material, and any other thing? Now, first is built, operate, and transfer. In the built, operate, and transfer model, the designing, procurement, building, and finance, everything is handled by the private entity. So, private entity is responsible for handling all the four components. So, the first one becomes wrong. Why? Because it is saying the government and the private entity, they both share the project cost. That has to be very clear to you. Sometimes what happens is that we actually overread or we do not read the full statement. तो वो नहीं करना है. You have to read the full statement. Government and private entity both are going to be involved or both are going to share the cost. Second, hybrid annuity model. In the hybrid annuity model, 40% project cost is being beared by the government and 60% by the private entity, and out of the 60% also there is going to be provision for the borrowing part. A larger part will be from the borrowings itself. So this statement becomes right. Both the government and the private sector are collaborating with respect to finances or sharing the burden of finance. Third, build, own, operate. इसमें भी again वही होगा, डिजाइन भी करेंगे उसको, ओन भी करेंगे, यानी उन्हीं का वो होगा. तो प्रोक्योरमेंट, बिल्डिंग, फाइनेंस, एवरीथिंग विल बी बाय द प्राइवेट एंटिटी ओनली. So this becomes wrong. Then engineering, procurement, and construction. Now in this model, the engineering, procurement, and construction will be done by the private entity, but the finance will be by the government. So this again becomes wrong because इसमें सिर्फ गवर्नमेंट ही फाइनेंस कर रही है, प्राइवेट का कोई रोल नहीं है फाइनेंसिंग के अंदर. So the answer should be option B, 2 only. Now next is question number 57. With reference to the silk sector of India, consider the following statement. India is the only country, see the keywords. India is the only country producing all the 5 known commercial silks. Now some of you might be confused कि there are only 4 varieties of the commercial silk. So let's see that also. See, silk, it is having only 4 varieties: Mulberry, Tassar, Eri, and Muga. But Tassar is having 2 varieties. One is tropical Tassar and other is oak Tassar. So simply it means that there are 5 commercial varieties of the silk. First one is Mulberry, then tropical Tassar, oak Tassar, Eri, and the Muga silk. Now coming back to the question, the first statement is right. Second, India is the largest producer and exporter of the silk. This statement is wrong. It is China who is at the first position. And if we talk about India, last year India produced around 34,000 metric tons of silk. That was the figure for the last year. So this statement becomes wrong. Third, Airi silk, world's only vegan silk, is a GI product of Assam. Now first of all, vegan का simple meaning ये है कि there is no harm to the insect or the organism. During silk production होता क्या है कि when the silk cocoon is being formed, it is put in a boiling water, and the insect which is inside that cocoon that actually dies in that cocoon. Whereas in this Airi silk, the insect or leaves the cocoon, and the cocoon is then processed. So it is the only vegan silk, and it has got GI tag from Assam. So this statement becomes right. Even if we talk about this thing, there is a certification known as Eco Tax certificate, and this certificate is given by Germany for those textiles which do not use harmful chemicals and are environment friendly production. सो ये उनके लिए दिया जाता है जो कि एनवायरमेंट फ्रेंडली प्रोडक्शन यूनिट से रहती हैं, ये प्रोडक्शन प्रोसेस होता है, तो उसको दिया जाता है ओइको टैक्स सर्टिफिकेशन. सो दिस क्वेश्चन इज इन द कंटेक्स्ट ऑफ दिस सर्टिफिकेशन ओनली, कि ये सर्टिफिकेशन अभी दिया गया है. सो द थर्ड स्टेटमेंट इज राइट हियर. द आंसर इज ऑप्शन सी 1 and 3 only. Now if we talk about the India silk, so Indian Silk Export Promotion Council is there. Then we are having Northeast Handicraft and Handloom Development Corporation. Then we are having Northeast Regional Textile Promotion Scheme. Then Integrated Scheme for Development of the Silk Industry, Catalytic Development Program, and lastly Silk Samarg and Silk Samarg 2 scheme. So these are the important schemes with respect to the silk production. Now next is the what are the various silks which have been given GI tags. So total of 10 silks have been given GI tag. For example, Pochampalli ikat, it is given in Telangana. Then Chanderi silk in Madhya Pradesh, Mysore silk in Karnataka, Kanchipuram in Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, Salem silk and Arni silk have also been given GI tag. Then we have Muga silk of Assam, Champa silk of Chhattisgarh, Bhagalpur silk of Bihar, and Banaras brocade and saris of the UP. So all these type of silks have been given GI tag. Now next is question number 58. It says which of the following best define the finfluencers. So finfluencers का simple मतलब है finance influencers. Finance influencers. Influencers, so we know the social media. Whoever are having more followers, they become influencers. So those who are engaged in financial advisory, they are known as finfluencers. So the statement second is right. A person who provides information or advice on financial matters through social media without. Now the difference between the first and second statement is that they have to be registered entity with SEBI. This is wrong. Even SEBI has been very strict against the finfluencers, and it has taken some steps. So finfluencers have not to be registered with the SEBI. They are not formally recognized. They are not given any certification from SEBI itself. So these are a person who provides information or advice on financial matters through social media, and they don't need to be registered with the regulators. They can be registered or they cannot be registered. The second statement becomes right here. So answer is option B. Now next is question number 59. Consider the following statement regarding the Fiscal Health Index 2025. Now it is an initiative by Niti Aayog. Yes, this is an initiative by the Niti Aayog. And Niti Aayog, the objective behind this Fiscal Health Index has been to provide a comparative analysis of fiscal health across the India, कि जो states हैं वो अपने finances को कैसे maintain करते हैं, अपने fiscal health को कैसे maintain करती है, उसके लिए वो लेके आए हैं. Secondly, to identify the areas of strength and concerns in the states so that they can take prompt action and they can utilize their strength. Third, to promote transparency, accountability, and prudent financial management through empirical assessment. Because when we are comparing other countries, when we are comparing other states, then we can say that why we are not doing this. For example, Odisha has actually topped this fiscal health index. So other states will be actually motivated that they can also achieve this thing. Next is to assist policymakers in making informed decisions aimed at enhancing fiscal sustainability and resilience. So these are the basic objectives of the fiscal health index. Now, what are going to the parameters? The first parameter will be revenue generation and mobilization. कि आप टैक्स कहाँ से लेते हो, उसके टैक्स बॉयंसी कितनी है आपकी, नॉन टैक्स रेवेन्यू कितना आता है, तो वो किस में आएगा, रेवेन्यू जनरेशन एंड मोबिलाइजेशन में. सेकंड है रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर और एक्सपेंडिचर मैनेजमेंट एंड प्रायोरिटीज. इसमें क्या होगा कि हाउ यू आर अलोकेटिंग योर एक्सपेंडिचर, हाउ मच इज गोइंग फॉर द कैपिटल, हाउ कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर कितना हो रहा है, हाउ मच यू आर अडेयरिंग टू द फिस्कल डिसिप्लिन. So these things are going to become under the expenditure management and priorities. This is the second thing that they have watched. Third is debt management. How much you are maintaining the debt to GDP ratios. Are you what is the interest payment burden? How are you paying those interest at time or not? Then what is the sustainability of the debt portfolios? Because we have seen the states in which they have given multiple schemes. Now they are not having funds to even give the income. So they are saying ki what is the debt sustainability of your debt portfolio, ki how much sustainable is your debt. So that is next. Then next is fiscal deficit management. How the states are managing the fiscal deficit as compared to their state GDP, and are they adhering to the fiscal statutory limit. What is the statutory limit? It is given by the FRBM Act. तो वो FRBM Act को adhere करते हैं या नहीं करते हैं. Lastly, overall fiscal sustainability. It says composite analysis of revenue, expenditure deficit, debt indicator to gauge long-term fiscal health. So these are the 5 parameters on basis of which the Niti Aayog have actually assessed ki, what the states are doing. And the data has been taken from CAG. Now next thing is that on basis of this they have prepared a whole list. So 18 states have been included here. And the first state is Odisha. Odisha has topped this thing. Then after that, Chhattisgarh, Goa, Jharkhand, Gujarat comes. Now next is, the question is, the first statement is right here. Second is also right. So answer becomes option C, both 1 and 2. Now next is question number 96. Question number 96 is, the income tax bill of 2025 has recently classified virtual digital assets as property and capital asset. In this context, consider the following. देखो इसको क्लासिफाई करने का सिंपल मीनिंग ये है कि there is going to be a tax. So government has said that 30% tax will be imposed on VDAs if you are gaining something. So whatever gains a person makes by selling or by transfer of the VDAs or virtual digital assets, the 30% tax will be imposed upon that, and it will be a blanket tax. There will be no reductions in these tax. Now the statement is, the first one is wrong. Non-fungible tokens have been included, and cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ethereum has been included. Gift cards and reward points, these are not included here. So non-fungible tokens and cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoins and Ethereum have been included as the virtual digital assets. So answer here becomes option A, 2 and 4 only. Now one thing I want to tell you here about is about this non-fungible tokens और fungible tokens. ये दो चीजें क्या होती हैं? देखो fungible tokens are the digital assets. जैसे Bitcoin हो गया, that is a fungible token. It is having its own value. It is identical, interchangeable. We can exchange the Bitcoins. So Bitcoins becomes a fungible token. Second is a non-fungible token. Non-fungible token is like a unique digital identifier. जैसे एक रिसिप्ट आपको मिलती है, फॉर एग्जाम्पल आई हैव ब्रॉट दिस माइक, सो आई विल बी हैविंग अ रिसिप्ट फॉर दैट. दैट इज अ नॉन फंजिबल टोकन. अगर वो डिजिटल स्पेस में हम देखें, कैसे डिजिटल स्पेस में देखेंगे? फॉर एग्जाम्पल अ पर्सन हैज क्रिएटेड अ सॉन्ग. फॉर दैट सॉन्ग अ नॉन फंजिबल टोकन विल बी जनरेटेड. दैट नॉन फंजिबल टोकन विल बी अ यूनिक डिजिटल आइडेंटिफायर and it has been recorded on a blockchain. एक blockchain पे उसको record करेंगे so that वो temper ना हो पाए, and is used to certify ownership and authenticity. वो उसकी ownership और authenticity को certify करेगा. That is a non-fungible token. So if you want to simplify it in the layman language, नॉन फंजिबल टोकन एक रिसिप्ट की तरह है जो आपको मिलती है, जो वेरीफाई करेगी दैट यू आर द ओनर ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर एसेट. सेकेंडली फंजिबल टोकन मनी की तरह है, which is having a unique value which can be exchanged, for example bitcoins. So fungible token is bitcoin, non fungible token is any particular unique identifying receipt that you get, and that is integrated in the blockchain. Next is question number 97. With reference to RBI sterilization operations, consider the following statement. Sterilization is a process. Sterilization is a process. Yes, sterilization is a process through which RBI offers the impact of the foreign exchange interventions on the domestic liquidity. देखो, for example, China, if it says कि I'm going to sell the dollars. So if China is selling the dollars, that simply means that the value of dollar is decreasing and the value of rupee is increasing. ऐसा होगा? अगर डॉलर की वैल्यू डिक्लाइन करेगी तो रुपए की वैल्यू इंक्रीज करेगी. दैट्स वेरी ऑब्वियस. सो व्हेन दिस हैपेंस, तो इससे क्या होगा? इंडिया के एक्सपोर्ट्स पे इंपैक्ट पड़ेगा, बिकॉज एक्सपोर्ट्स आर गोइंग टू बिकम कॉस्टली एंड इंपोर्ट्स हो जाएंगे चीप. इफ द इंपोर्ट्स गेट चीप, देन देयर विल बी मोर डिमांड फॉर द इंपोर्ट्स. जैसे कि मान लो अगर इंपोर्ट्स को चीप कर दिया जाए, तो जो एप्पल आईफोन, इफ इट इज कमिंग एट 80,000 रुपीज, इट विल बी स्टार्ट कमिंग एट 60,000 रुपीज. सो एवरीवन विल बी रशिंग फॉर दैट थिंग. सो इट इज गोइंग टू क्रिएट अ इंपोर्ट डिमांड. सो उससे क्या होगा? इंडिया की जो लिक्विडिटी है उसके ऊपर इफेक्ट होगा. यू माइट हैव इन्वेस्टेड दोस 60,000 रुपीज समवेयर एल्स, और यू माइट हैव नॉट यूज्ड देम, they might be kept in the bank, तो इंडिया की लिक्विडिटी का पार्ट रहते. But now you have purchased the imported item, for example iPhone, then simply it means that that money is going out of the country. So to avoid any kind of these fluctuations, RBI goes for a sterilization operation. स्टरलाइजेशन हो सकता है कि यूएस डॉलर की वैल्यू गिरे तब भी किया जा सकता है, यूएस डॉलर की वैल्यू इंक्रीज करे तब भी किया जा सकता है. सो इट इज बोथ वेज. इट इज जस्ट टू स्टेबलाइज द डोमेस्टिक करेंसी, कि बाहर की जो भी whatever foreign currency fluctuations are there, to avoid or to minimize the impact of those fluctuations on the Indian currency, the sterilization operation is being done. कि जो भी दिक्कतें आ रही हैं उसको इस ऑपरेशन के थ्रू हम लोग नलिफाई करेंगे और हमारी इकोनॉमी को हम लोग स्टेबल रखेंगे. दैट इज द बेसिक पर्पस. सो द फर्स्ट स्टेटमेंट बिकम्स राइट. सेकंड, आरबीआई कैन यूज बोथ लिक्विडिटी एब्जॉर्प्शन एंड लिक्विडिटी इंजेक्शन. बिल्कुल कर सकता है. इफ द वैल्यू ऑफ द यूएस डॉलर इज इंक्रीजिंग, दैट मीन्स द रुपी इज डिप्रिशिएटिंग, सो इट इज गोइंग टू इंक्रीज अवर इट इज गोइंग टू इंक्रीज अवर इंपोर्ट बिल. तो उसको कम करने के लिए गवर्नमेंट क्या करेगी? इट इज गोइंग टू एब्जॉर्ब लिक्विडिटी सो दैट रुपी की वैल्यू को भी ऊपर किया जा सके. ऑन द अदर हैंड, for example I've told you the example of China. if China is selling US dollars, तो US डॉलर की वैल्यू कम हो रही है, जिसकी वजह से हमारा इंपोर्ट इंक्रीज हो जाएगा, एक्सपोर्ट्स अफेक्ट होंगे. तो उसके लिए गवर्नमेंट क्या करेगी? रुपी को मार्केट के अंदर रिलीज करेगी. सो इट कैन बी एब्जॉर्प्शन as well as injection depending upon what is the condition. So it includes both the things. So the second statement also becomes right. Third is open market operations are commonly used. What is open market operation? Open market operation simply means कि RBI goes to the market, buys bonds or sell bonds. If it is buying bonds, that means it is increasing the liquidity. If it is selling bonds, it simply means it is absorbing the liquidity. So it can go for the open market operations. So all the three statements are right here. Answer becomes option D, 1, 2 and 3. Next is last question. With reference to the prompt corrective action framework for the banks. What is a prompt corrective action? देखो नाम से ही पता चल रहा है prompt, कि जैसे ही you have seen there is some danger, you start taking some action. So it says prompt corrective. So if RBI sees any problem with any particular bank, then RBI is going to take this PCA action or prompt corrective action, so that that bank can be saved from getting bankrupt. The first statement is PCA framework can be invoked when a bank breaches regulatory thresholds related to the capital to risk weighted assets ratio, CRAR. So actually the PCA, there are three thresholds in which the RBI focuses upon. The first one is asset quality or NPAs. If the NPAs increases above a value, then these thresholds are breached. For NPAs we have a 6%. The first threshold is कि 6 to 9 के बीच में NPAs हो जाए. सेकेंड थ्रेशोल्ड है कि 9 to 12% के बीच में एनपीएस हो जाए, और अगर 12% से ज्यादा हो गए तो थ्रेशोल्ड थर्ड इज ब्रीच्ड. सेकेंड इज सीआरएआर. CRAR के लिए क्या है कि 12 to 15% का फर्स्ट थ्रेश होल्ड है, 12 to 9% का सेकंड थ्रेश होल्ड है और 9% का थर्ड थ्रेश होल्ड है कि अगर CRAR डिक्लाइन कर रहा है या NPA इंक्रीज कर रहा है तो इन बोथ द केसेस द प्रॉम्प्ट करेक्टिव एक्शन विल बी टेकन। थर्ड वन इज लेवरेज, दैट अगेन इज देयर, टायर 1 कैपिटल जो है अगर वो 10 से 8% के बीच में हो तो रिस्क 1 इज देयर, if it is between 8 to 6 then risk 2 is there, if it is less than 6 then risk 3 is there or threshold 3 is there. So basically it is taking three parameters for identifying which whether it has to take a prompt corrective action or not. So ये एक तरह से रेड फ्लैग्स हैं जो कि जिसके बेसिस पे आरबीआई डिसाइड करता है कि देयर शुड बी सम प्रॉम्प्ट करेक्टिव एक्शन और नॉट। सो द फर्स्ट स्टेटमेंट इज राइट। Second, under PCA framework, bank faces restrictions on lending and may also be required to initiate management challenge change. Obviously, क्योंकि अगर मान लो NPA बढ़े यानी you have not seen कि wherever you are giving loan, will they be able to pay you back or not? So that means there are going to be some lending restrictions because bank is not having its own money. Whatever we deposit, that money is with the banks. So banks को ढंग से they have to see कि wherever they are lending that they should not be lending to the NPAs. वो ऐसी जगह lend ना करे जहाँ पे willful defaulters हों. So that's why it becomes very important. This is one of the important steps under PCA. कि their lending restrictions will be imposed. They can lend only to the secure assets so that they can be brought out from the PCA framework. Third, a bank under PCA framework cannot be merged or restructured. It is one of the part of the PCA itself. If a bank seems to be non-viable, then it can be merged or restructured. For example, it happened with Union Bank. Union Bank was merged with Punjab National Bank when Union Bank was under PCA. Or the other example is Dena Bank. Dena Bank was merged with Bank of Baroda, and that was basically when it was under prompt corrective action. So under prompt corrective action, lending restrictions can be there. Under prompt corrective action, the banks can be merged if it is seen that it will not be able to viably take on its take on its functions. So the third statement also becomes right here. So all the three statements are correct. Answer becomes option D, 1, 2 and 3. Now this completes our discussion for the economy portion. Now you are, after this you will be directly going for your examination on 25th May. First of all the best for you, to you, all of you, for your prelims examination. Secondly, some things I want to just tell you so that you are able to avoid any kind of mistakes which can hamper your prospects for clearing the prelims. First and foremost thing, this period which you are having from 4th May till your 24th May, this period should be used for particularly for the revision part. Whatever you have done, whatever you have covered till now, you try to consolidate that, you try to revise that. Don't leave any portion, at least don't leave the important portion if you have already left it. Third thing is that please don't take up new source for anything. For example, for the current affairs, there's a habit of having multiple sources. Don't go for that. Whatever source you have done till now, just take that source, revise it multiple times, it will be more than enough. Secondly, you are also having questions in these Anubhav examinations, so please focus on those current affair questions also. They might come in the final examination as well. Now, while in the examination itself, one thing is important, that whatever you have prepared in the last 1 year, that is going to pay you. Second thing that you need to focus upon is the mental stability or mental psychology of yourself in the examination. You don't have to panic in any situation. There are going to be questions that are going to be difficult. They can be grouped as one group as well, and it may happen that you stumble upon that group in the first itself कि पहली बारी में आपको वो क्वेश्चन मिल गए पेपर में जो डिफिकल्ट थे and you are not able to cover 10 questions. So in that case, please maintain your decorum, be patient, panic नहीं करना है. If you panic, your mind gets clouded and you are bound to make silly mistakes. So even if you are not able to do 10, 15 questions, then also just maintain your calmness, switch over to other questions and try to attempt those questions. Then come back to these difficult questions. So mental stability will be very important, because if you're not having mental stability, you panic, and after panicking your mind gets clouded and you make silly mistakes जो पेपर के बाहर आके आपको दिखती है कि ये मैं easily कर सकता था, ये गलत हो गया. Even those who have attempted earlier, who are giving their second, third or fourth attempt, fifth attempts, they might have seen कि ऐसे पहले भी ऐसा हुआ है कि आते हुए क्वेश्चन गलत हुए हैं. तो those questions you have to avoid. Third thing is that please read the question carefully. Don't rush through the question. Mark the key important keywords there so that you are able to address the demand of the question. That is very important. And last thing that is very important, that while taking your answers to the OMR sheet, be careful. Don't rush in that time. आराम से OMR के बबल्स को फिल करना है, so that ऐसा ना हो कि question, you know the question, you have marked it correctly, and when you are filling in the OMR, you are making it wrong. So these things should be avoided. So to summarize it, revise, don't add new source, don't get panicked in the examination, be patient, read the question carefully, and lastly fill the OMR carefully. Thank you very much, and all the best to all of you. Thank you.